Hey friends, let me introduce you with our today's guest, Michael BJØRNLUND, investor and managing partner at Rockstart, an early-stage VC fund that has backed more than 250 startups, seen 9 exits, and apart from great work and experience, Michael went to a famous survival TV show where he learned so many lessons, and few of those he agreed to share on this episode. So if you're a startup or a business owner and thinking about raising a fund, you must listen to this conversation. We discuss how to pitch to the investors, the main factors that lead to a success, and most importantly, lessons that startup owners should learn. So Michael, let's start with the usual first question that I give from pretty much all of the people that I interview, the story, because it's most of the time very interesting to hear the story, how people start their journey, the professional one or the personal one. So how your journey, to become an investor started? Maybe there was some kind of magical miracle or something.
Yeah, no, there is actually a lot of serendipity and not a real structured plan for me to get to where I am today. So also when I talk to my kids today and they talk about what is their plan, what do they want to do, I'm also saying, well, you can actually make it and have a great time even without a definite plan.
For sure.
So that being said, I am an investor today, and I'm doing that mostly because I enjoy working with lots of different people, and I'm also extremely curious by nature. So if you take those ingredients into what I'm doing, it makes a lot of sense actually, because I meet a hell of a lot of founders every week, new founders, hear about new business ideas, new models, etc., and I can support them. And I also get to stimulate that curiosity by learning every day.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's very inspiring all the time, when you meet in the interesting startup owners or new ideas and some type, the revolutionary ideas that can really change a lot of things what we absorb right now. I remember when I was 22, we've been going to our first pitch, let's call it that way. And those business sharks are sitting in front of me, and I'm like super nervous. I can't even talk. I'm like all shaking. And I remember that I had the concept that I need to push the idea to them, make it so amazing that they would really love to join. And sometimes I felt that I kind of, it's not a good word to say, but like licking their asses, trying to be the best and accept everything what they're saying and so on. And then I had to change this and to make change inner stuff in my probably thinking that I'm asking or I'm inviting investors to join the project, to be a part of it, to be a team member, and to help us to grow, to spark the idea and so on. So what do you notice when startup owners are coming to you and pitch? What are the mistakes most of the time they make?
Yeah, if I can start by commenting on what you just said, then I also meet a lot of these people who are not necessarily themselves or at ease with what they're trying to sell, because essentially you're selling the idea that you've committed your life to building to an investor. But you should not be sucking up to me just because you want my money. I need to see you as you are and how you believe in the product, the service, the company you're building. And only if you do that genuinely and with authenticity will I really see what I'm getting, right? And I think the key to some of that is, and I worked with sales training many people in my past corporate jobs, is also to feel that you're equal. So whenever you start in a conversation, if you're the underdog already as a founder pitching an investor, that's a wrong balance of power. So feel equal because you have something to sell. Most likely you will talk to someone who's not going to buy. That's the odds, right? Whether you're selling software services or pencils or consulting, whatever, as a founder or not a founder, many people will say no. So never mind that, but find the ones that are actually curious about what you're doing on the basis of being real. So I would say that's one
that's
important
very
thing.
important, and especially I've had to learn this lesson in the hard way, because when you start being a startup owner when you're so young, you face, the self-confidence stuff like a lot of the time, and
Sure.
you question yourself and so on. So I'm really glad that I had a co-founder who kind of helped me to grow, and who is very strong and so on. But the beginning was very, very hard, very challenging, and I really agree with each of your words. And the confidence when you go, and to be in the same level with the investors or other people sitting in front of you, is very important.
But you don't have to be overly confident. It's
Yeah,
okay to
that's
be nervous,
also-
for example, right?
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. I think we all understand it, that nervousness just comes and goes
Sure.
everywhere you are. That's fine. But just consider yourself equal. And that if that person doesn't want to buy, okay, it's fine. You move on to the next. So that's one thing. Then I would, of course, say other mistakes that founders can make at times is not knowing exactly what it is you're selling and your starting point. So if you just talk about your business being fantastic and huge, it's just going to blow up into something, unicorn tomorrow, you need a little bit of sense of reality check, and say, okay, I'm going to approach this part of the market, this segment, these types of customers, or addressing this problem. So you need a little bit of a storyline to what you're doing. You don't need to have done much, achieved much yet, but why is it that, tell me why it is that you're going to be a success in doing this. And then maybe there's something about potential, but being realistic that it's not just going to come tomorrow, because you probably have a lot of things to achieve before that. So some realism is, at least for me, also quite useful.
Sure, and it also brings, probably for investors, the view of confidence in you and what you do as well, because you have a plan. It's basically a plan, the step-by-step plan, how you can achieve, the big vision or something. Because I also noticed a lot of times when the founders are talking about the big vision and so on, and sometimes it might look, unrealistic, and then you think they're thinking big, but the execution, you have to execute like small steps and achieve it.
But it's fine to think big, because all investors are talking about this 10x or 100x wanting to have their money back a certain amount of time. So you need to show that there could be a big market. But I don't think you should be too fixed on how you're going to get there. Therefore, most investors will not require a very detailed plan, but at least, okay, what are you going to do the next 12 months? What do you need of help to get there? One thing is money, but also you need probably some more resources, unless you're like the magician of all, so who can do everything, jack of all trades. Founder life is being a little bit of a jack of all trades, but not everything, right? You want to have someone in who can help you. Maybe even an investor that comes with more than just money, but also some network or support in terms of building your business.
For sure. And what would be the most important things that you value when you're deciding that, okay, this is the great startup and I will, invest in it, but what are the breaking points for your decision?
Well, there is, and you probably hear many investors who would say the same, about the people behind the idea, because probably someone else will have had close to the same idea as you have somewhere else, maybe even in this country or in another country. Many people have the same idea. So what's going to make or break that you do it? So you need to have a strong faith in the people that are behind the idea and who's going to do it. So ultimately, that's what you invest in. Also for me, I invest in very early stage, both personally as an angel and also through Rockstart. And it's really, I'm putting money into people. So I need to believe that you have some of what it takes. And that can actually be, there's not a formula for what does it take for you to be successful in your venture. There's no formula for that, but it's a little bit of a gut feel plays a role here. And then you can do all sorts of checks around it. On you, your team, take reference calls on your tech and evaluate your market opportunity, but ultimately it comes down to you and someone else with you on the team.
That's actually probably the number one thing that we heard when we were fundraising. And I usually ask the investors, why did you decide to invest in us? And they all said the same, it's the team. Because now when you're just starting the business, there might be a lot of like pivots, there might be a lot of challenges, and it's important how the team will manage it and what they're gonna do if they're gonna say, okay, it's not gonna happen, you know, it's too hard, we just let it go, or there's gonna be a fighting team that will take all of their courage and energy and push it through, maybe. So that's of course the number one thing that we heard as well. And what about I understand that the team is the most important factor, but probably let's a bit go further regarding the founders, because you know, I think they are, even though that I personally believe that the whole team is the main driver, but the founders are playing like a major role, especially at the beginning of the startup. What about them? Have you?
So when I say team, I actually also mean the founders, because typically when I invest, it is so early that there are only the founders, maybe one or two more. So it is definitely the founders I would look at, and there's an element of how do they appear to complement each other with. That's not just tech versus someone being commercially savvy and someone who can actually get stuff done and you know, deliver on the plans. You would like to see a combination of these things, but it's not only that, right? It's also personalities, and it's a lot about. I at least spend a lot of time with any founder asking them, so why are you doing this together with that person or that person? And how did you meet? How long have you worked together? So have you been in a battle together? Have you argued? Have you settled the argument and moved on? You're still doing it despite your indifferences. That's not to say that someone who randomly met at the cafe just over here 1 week ago and came up with a great idea, they could be a success. Sure. But I like to see if you have actually tried this out, because a very large, now I'm talking anecdotally, I don't have the numbers actually, but a large reason for breakups or for startups not to succeed are founder breakups. Yeah, and I personally had it with the previous startup, and it's a really important lesson to learn actually, and to decide the main person that you will have to grow the business, and you will have lots of arguments, like lots of arguments most of the time, and it's very important that you have the same like driver or the values as well, because if you have a clash of the values in very important decisions, it might be a huge problem. And then you can link it over to, okay, that there is hopefully a reason for why you are doing what you're doing. That's also in the founder team, at least one person should have some reason for doing this, right? It's mad you're throwing yourself into the entrepreneurial journey, so why? Have you felt the pain on your own body almost, working in a company as an intern or as a full-time employee, whatever, if it's young or older entrepreneurs? Do you have some personal relatives who have experienced a given issue that you're trying to address, so you felt the pain personally even? What is the reason? Because first it gives you a drive that there is actually a problem. It also gives you an understanding and probably some network to assess whether the problem is as big as you think. The flip side, of course, is that you have experienced the problem, but you might be one out of you know, only a few people, but for you it felt really painful, but there's not a big enough market. So you also need to check these things up against each other.
Sure. And what about when we most of the time talking about, startups are looking for investors, you know, but what about in a bit other way? When you, for example, find the investor and you go through a due diligence process and so on, as a startup, what you have to value in the investor, because you're not only, you know, even in our case, we haven't thought only about the money, we thought about the people that are joining. How do they understand the value? Do they know that they can, what they can also bring on the table and so on? So what about the other side, you know, of the fundraising?
So for anyone out there who is actually considering an investor, do you invest at due diligence also? That's what you're asking, right? So investors do all sorts of things and checks on you as an entrepreneur. We take up a lot of your time to look under each and every rock in each corner to see what might be dirty on you. Why is it that you're not going to be a success? And you should actually do the same. So always ask, any investor, what have you achieved? How have you worked with portfolio companies before? Have you actually done investments before? Have you sat on the board of startups or advisory boards? Have you been a founder yourself? And if the investors say yes, then okay, so tell me who. And is there, by the way, someone that I can call up and ask about what is your reputation? And if you have a good investor who is speaking the truth about his or her achievements, then they will happily share some names. And then you can decide to call them or not. But at least the test is if someone is willing to share names. You have to do that because it's a vital decision when you bring in one of these investors. You probably want to bring them in because they're relevant for your company, not just with money, right? And the reputation of you, all of a sudden you will be seen together with this investor from the next investor who will say, why the hell did you bring in this douchebag? Why is Michael in your investor cap table? It makes no sense. I hear really bad things about him. And that can almost mean that people will hands off.
Yeah, that's very important.
So you have to do that, absolutely.
It's very interesting because especially when we, for example, fundraise for the second time, so the lead investor was the one that helped us probably the most. You know? So he had the same calls with the investors like we did, and he had to kind of tell, what he found in us, how we manage all of the challenges and so on. So I think especially the lead investor or the first angel investors for the VC funds or something is very, very important. And I think it's one of the things that it's very important to notice for the startups, because we also had, our friends had the same experience when they were desperately looking for money, and you don't even consider what are the people behind it, and even the source of money that they're bringing as well. So if you do not, do the due diligence for the investor, it might be a very hard lesson.
It's for me today in Rockstart, I have only last year launched this new fund, Emerging Technologies Fund. We made 11 investments now. 2 of them within the last few weeks have been in follow-on investment discussions, where we are helping to really do exactly what you say here. What is our reason for being involved in this company? Opening doors to new investors, telling our story, why did we invest? Of course, it becomes quite relevant also here that we can actually also commit more money in this round. So that's another thing to check, depending on what you want from that investor that you're considering. Does he or she or the VC have the capacity to invest again? Because it just sends a really strong signal, right? If your current investors are also chipping in with more money in the next round. So that it doesn't always have to be like that, but it's good to know at least, so you have some of your investors with the ability to follow on invest.
That's what we also noticed when we were fundraising too. And also of course, as a woman, maybe I look at everything in more into the feelings perspective or emotional side, but actually there were so many challenges, and emotionally as well, not only the hard working stuff and something, but sometimes you face a lot of emotional how can I say hurdle, but emotional capacity, let's call it that way. And sometimes I was just calling for our investors, can you tell your experience when you face the same issues, when you had this down period, when you really think, okay, this is not going to happen, I'm not going to do this, and I emotionally blown out, and it's not only about the business stuff, but it's also about the emotional support, because you're kind of becoming as a family, so you have to support each other. And that's one of the things that I really value to our investors, is that I can always ask help. Always, no matter what type of help.
That's fantastic. You won't have that all the time.
Sure.
Some investors will even say that they will do it, or you sense it, but they don't have the time or the interest, or they're not good at it. But fortunately, many investors will, and I think you're quite fortunate in that sense that you found, smart, you made some good decisions to bring in the right investors. Because I totally understand why that is of great value, because your life is really tough. As a founder, I have the deepest respect for that. I fundraised myself for the fund, but still in the context of a brand name of Rockstart. So I had
Sure.
something to stand on.
Sure,
You're
sure,
going
sure.
out, your own business, and just ringing the doorbells,
Oh
right?
yes, oh yes.
Cold calling.
I'm still sometimes considering why
Yeah.
I chose to do that, why.
Yeah.
But then you kind of coming back to the same why when you started the business, to the idea, the problem, and you understand that, well, it's the main driver and you just have to do this
Yeah.
no matter what it takes. So let's keep, the investment side on a corner, and let's come back to more of the personal let's say a background of yours,
Yeah.
about the Robinson expedition. You know, when I was a child, I was always looking to the Survivor, and I was always thinking, oh my God, why people are doing this type of thing? I mean, you're going to some type of the island, you're without any food, it's mentally and physically exhausting. At that time when you're a kid, you're kind of do not think about the challenge, about the inner values that you can receive and so on. So why did you decide to join this type of a really challenging experience?
Yeah. It was I wouldn't say a lifelong dream, but also when I was 20, that was when the first episode of Survivor aired in Denmark, where I'm from. And I just come out of the army, where I spent 2 years. I was living in a dorm as a trainee in a large shipping company with a lot of other youthful people there, and I saw that on TV and said, "Oh, that looks great!
Yeah.
I have to do that one day." And then more than 20 years passed, where for different reasons it's always been in the back of my mind, but I never really had the chance, I guess, or the courage to sign up. But then I did it finally 3 years ago. Actually, now it's 4 years ago. But really, why did I then do it? Aside from it being a nice challenge, that kind of also is an example of what I do. I like to push limits. And in this case, what I really wanted to do is to test myself. I'm known as a fairly calm person, even in stormy conditions, also quite resilient. But how far can you go when then, and also like a diplomatic personality, when you are thrown into a competition where it's only the last one standing, right? Last man standing. How do I react when I'm super hungry and stressed out, working in the heat under no food, competitions all the time? Plus you have the thing that someone is always looking at stabbing you in the back, right? Because it's a game show, right?
That's the thing that I was always like, it seems to me that it's the worst one. The food, the challenges are one thing, but those manipulations or something that might happen behind
But that's
the back.
it, right?
Wow.
And I kind of accepted that. I said, I don't think I will become like a bastard and like a really non-behaved person. So I wanted to test to see, am I still myself under these conditions? And then just accept that I probably don't want to win at any cost, because I also have professional relations, my family at home who's going to watch it. But what are they going to see? Can I actually control it? So that was the reason why I did it.
It's so interesting.
Good challenge.
It's good well, I think it's amazing challenge, but
I lost a lot of weight, so it's also a good diet.
Oh my God.
Not sustainable diet, but
well, But what about the lessons you learned? Because I believe that there were so many challenges, and you probably learned a lot about yourself as well. That maybe these challenges help you to, become a better, more loved person, for your family or others. So maybe there were lessons that you learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say one thing is that our bodies are amazing. Mm-hmm. We can really do a lot of things under extreme conditions. Yeah. That's quite fascinating, I think. That's also why you hear stories of how long people survive without at least food. You need some water, of which we had plenty. And then I would say on a people side, I think it's good, also in the world that we live in, where prejudice is extremely high. We judge people very quickly, whether it's social media or politically or various sentiments we have, how we were brought up, etc. But here you are put together with, we were 22 people, a collection of people representing Denmark, all different educational backgrounds, political opinions, of course, gender and skin color and whatever. And when you put together, you can make friends, really good connections to people that you would otherwise think, if you have prejudice at least, I'm never going to befriend that guy walking out there, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good lesson. And then also the last thing I would say is, that there is some merit to keeping your head cool and being patient at times. Then you can handle many situations. So breathe, and you'll be all right.
Wow. We kind of, we meditate a lot, and we have a lot of like different like silence retreats and so on, and they really help me to go through a lot of challenges in my life. And we always tell the same that you just told me, that we have more energy and more capacity to do things that we even think most of the time, because I think our mind limits us, and we think, oh my God, I'm not gonna make it. But then when you face the situation and you know that there's no other way but just push it through, you do this, and you also get a bit better with yourself, to know yourself better, to see that you have like bigger limits and that you can push yourself through a lot of challenging situations. And then you come back to your real life, and then you understand that, okay, this situation, when I thought that I'm not going to make it, I can do this. So I think it's very important to see that there's no limits, even though that I think there is, but
not many limits really, which essentially there is some truth to the thing that you can basically do anything you want. Of course, it's not entirely true, but if you have that spirit, you're much more likely to succeed. And despite the wavering, the doubt you're going to get along the way in the founder journey, or whilst you're on a deserted island, or whichever you're doing in life, in a relationship. Now I'm wearing my ring, I'm still married, right? But there will be ups and downs. We can endure a lot of things.
Okay, and of course you're really, as we can see, not only active in your work, but you're also working mentally with yourself, with physical activity as well. And as a young entrepreneur, I've noticed that there are a lot of young people facing like mental health issues. The entrepreneurs who have like stress, anxiety, depression, and burnouts. So what would you recommend for it's not only for entrepreneurs, but it's only for the people who have active life or active mental life and so on.
Oh, I wish I had a magic bullet for that, right? Because it's not just in entrepreneurship, but in society. It's an increasing problem. You could even argue it's a public health crisis. I wish I could say that it was that easy just to start with talking about it, but it's hard to acknowledge the challenge one has, because perhaps you don't understand what it is. You're certainly probably shy, uncomfortable to talk about it, but I think that stigma that is associated with whatever it is, or just low confidence levels, which I had myself, big deal. I also have people very close to me in the family who's dealing with that. But that can also spin into other things, certainly for youth. But if you can feel the courage to talk about it with someone who's close to you, and hopefully you can trust that the person will not judge you, that's also actually an investor. Even if you have an investor, you say you can speak openly about things and challenges you feel, that's great. Some other founders will feel, oh shit, they're gonna consider me weak. Maybe they will not invest again. It will be held against me in court, in the investor court. But that's essentially it. I would say starting point is to acknowledge what's happening and be courageous enough to talk about it. I think you take a very large step towards the first part of healing. And then whichever way you go, many different tools are available, and I think they help people in different ways. It's also a little bit about belief, your style, I think, for what approach works.
And of course, in any different situations or stages in your life, the different things might help you, to overcome this situation. So for sure. Have you ever got the super down period, when you had to put a lot of effort to maybe push it through, or maybe feel better, happier, or?
I wouldn't say I have actually had a massive down. I remember way back when, a personal story of when I was dumped by the love of my life as a 19-20-year-old twice within a week. I felt pretty bad. I think my parents were a bit worried about me at the time. But I don't really count that in. I can feel like a big punch in the gut at times. But I'm back to what I said a little bit earlier on. Just think about saying, okay, it's going to be all right. We'll find a way. Being calm usually helps me to get back on top quite quickly.
Yeah, and I think calmness is very important. I personally not that calm as you are, so I had to learn lots of things, and that's why the breathing techniques, the meditation, all the silence retreats and so on, they help me a lot. But of course, maybe because you are young and you have a lot of fire in yourself and so on. So it's not a fire to create, but the fire can also destroy you too.
It can work in both ways. Huh? But I mean, sometimes people might even think, "Hey, man, does he have a heart rate? Is he actually alive?" Because I'm so calm. So you don't want to be too calm.
Well, you have a gift, you have a gift. And it's good that you use it.
You gotta use what plays to your strength, I guess you'd say.
And my last question would be, because the podcast itself is called Hello Inspiration, because when I've just started, I really wanted to interview people that really inspired me, their stories, their experience. So do you have something that inspires you?
I'm doing what I'm doing today to learn, as I said before, but also to become inspired by meeting you, someone who has tried the entrepreneurial journey several times, still is, makes a podcast universe. Sure, why not? We'll do that. So I'll just reach out to people like me. I think that's an inspiration. That tenacity, the energy that probably some of the ones also listening here exhibits, just investing their life, many times the savings, whatever they have, putting everything into trying to build a business for whatever drives them, that inspires me. And that's why I like what I do.
But it's usually you can see the sparkle in people's eyes when they do what they love, and I think that's it's a nice feeling to be able to do that.
And I think it's essential that you look for that in what you do, right? That I learned it only a bit later on in life, in work life also. So what do I actually care about? So when I'm doing my job, when I go to work, there will be different things I do. Somewhere like, okay, I have to do it. It doesn't get my blood flowing, right? Some of the ones I'm really hitting a state of flow, and I feel so excited, and I wish there was just more of that. And looking for that is important, because if you just go through this steady state all the time in life, whether that's your career or your love life, I also think it's going to be pretty dull if you just. You might be stable, but you need some excitement.
That's so true. But at the same time, what I've noticed, and when you talk about it in the entrepreneurship, the startup world, a lot of people think that it's, oh my God, it's so amazing. They're doing such an interesting job. But then when I basically 95% doing a really boring stuff, and I push myself through to do that, and I hate it. And only those 5% are the ones that brings me lots of happiness, and I try to compensate, those 95%. But usually the entrepreneurship journey is not, most of the time, very funny, and it's not very joyful and so on, So,
but there is enough of happy moments, exciting moments to pull up the average in a way. And then I also just it's again easy to say that you should look for something that really excites you, but I do appreciate that perhaps not everyone has the ability to go find that.
That's so true.
You know, it's not for everyone just to have the luxury of deciding different things. But then I also think that's a different way of compensating. You can find things in life, if not your day-to-day job, then some other things that really makes you excited. And that could be your family, your friends. It could be a voluntary work somewhere in an association for a good cause. It could be staying fit or mentally or physically. Lots of other things, right? It's not just your work.
Sure. And I think the intention here is also important, you know. You can do a boring job that you don't like and so on, but if you have an intention that I'm doing this for my family, I'm doing to make them live better or to have a better time when we can have, you know, vacation or something. So the cause that you have in your heart is sometimes compensate the boring work.
100%.
Thank you, Michael. It was really amazing conversation, and I feel inspired.
Me too. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.